What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a Tomatoito Boxing show, and we are out in Las Vegas. Unfortunately, I won't be taking part of the Virgil Ortiz, Bohachuk card. I came out for the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame, and I have some interviews that are going to be going up here either late this weekend, and during the week. But they will be going up, and I'm gonna space them out. And so keep an eye out for those. Those of you that don't follow the channel on YouTube, feel free to hit a subscribe on there, follow. And if you have those reminders clicked in, then you'll know that whenever I post another interview, you'll be the first to see it. I hope you enjoy them. I got some cool interviews that I managed to gather out at the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame, happening at the same time and around the same time frame as the weigh-in was happening yesterday evening for Virgil Ortiz and Serhii Bohachuk. So I couldn't go both ways. I couldn't swing over to the weigh-in and miss out on meeting some boxers and some legends out at the Boxing Hall of Fame. So I chose to stay stationary there and came away with some cool content for you. I got to talk to Zab Judah. I got to talk to Winky Wright, to Michael Nunn. Those of you that are familiar with 80s boxing, for you older fans, that remember Michael Nunn and what he did in the middleweight division when that division was stacked with middleweights. I think Hagler had already stepped out, but you had Hearns moving up, Duran, Leonard. They were all campaigning around that time. The 80s was the era of the Four Kings. Michael Nunn was coming in at a time where the Four Kings were basically starting to move away. Somewhat, because they still faced off each other years later when Michael Nunn was already a champion. But he never got a chance to run into any of them. But he basically ended up getting everybody that was coming up in that division that was chasing after the Four Kings. So all the guys that were moving up as contenders, as prospects that became contenders, and people that were getting title shots, they were lining themselves up. If you don't know who Michael Nunn is, go back and look at his fights. When he beats Tate, he beat Iron Barkley, the two fights with Cordoba. Great fighter, high pedigree, and a former middleweight champ. So that was a pleasure to talk to him. And then Winky, of course, man. I mean, holy crap, Winky, right? That's the era that I grew up in. Zab Judah, another great who's getting inducted into the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame. So I missed out on the weigh-in, and I'm sure I would have run into and garnered some really good interviews over there, but I stuck to this route. So I hope you enjoy those interviews. They'll be coming up in a few days' time, and throughout the weekend, I'll start posting content up there. I hope you enjoy those. But let's talk about what's coming up tonight, because tonight, instead of staying here, I'm going to be flying back home, and I'm going to cut my trip short. But we still want to cover what's going to be tonight, because by the time that I should be landing home, it should be about time for these two main cards to start. The first one, of course, the one taking place here in Vegas at the Michelob Ultra Arena, is between Virgil Ortiz and Serhii Bohachuk. They're going to be campaigning at 154 pounds, and they're fighting for Serhii Bohachuk's interim WBC super welterweight title, or junior middleweight, whatever you want to call it, 154. That's a division where just a week ago, we got to see Madrimov and Crawford. Crawford enters the 154-pounder, debuts at 154, and has now lifted a title for Madrimov and become an interim champion himself, campaigning for the first time at 154. This is the case with Virgil Ortiz making his debut at 154. Serhii Bohachuk fought Brian Mendoza on the undercard of Fundora and Sue, and that's where he ended up garnering the interim version of this WBC title. Who's the full version champion? Fundora, and Fundora, who defeated Sue, ended up becoming the WBC 154-pound champion and lifted the WBO title from Tim Sue. Because he's out with injuries, the interim went to Terence Crawford and Madrimov. I believe Madrimov was also the WBA interim champ, but I'm not sure what's going on with the WBA and who their champion is. I can't find it on the WBA site at the moment. I was under the impression that Madrimov was the WBA champ, nothing to do with the WBO. Because if you remember, Virgil Ortiz had a shot at Madrimov. He was a number one contender to challenge Madrimov for the 154-pound title, and they skipped him. They moved past him and entered Terence Crawford Madrimov last week. So Virgil Ortiz got skipped over and left without a fight. Then he was going to fight Tim Sue. to line himself up for whoever was going to be next up for either the Terence Crawford or Errol Spence sweepstakes or to go against Sebastian Fundora. Tim Tszyu pulls out due to injury, and Vergil Ortiz gets pulled out of the Riyadh season card. He was going to be the co-main event to Terence Crawford Madrimov. He pulls out of that card, and they generate an entire new card for him just a week later, which is going to take place tonight. Now he's fighting Serhii Bohachuk. That's how the movement happened there. It's a division there's so many big names, but it is a mess right now because you got Jermell Charlo wanting to come back. Most of the organizations ended up stripping Jermell Charlo. Some ended up naming him or placing him as champion in recess. Then they're elevating champions in one division. The WBO is a mess right now because they got Terence Crawford waiting to see what he was, or the WBA was awaiting to see what the result would be with Crawford and Madrimov to decide on what they would do with Brian Norman Jr. at welterweight, who's the interim champ for WBO. So now they got interim champs everywhere because they're still listing Terence Crawford on their site as their champion, with Brian Norman Jr. Being the interim to the WBO at 147. But they said that if Crawford was successful against Madrimov, then they would elevate Brian Norman Jr. to full status at 147. Instead, nothing's happened. We're days removed and everybody's just hush about it. So Terence has interim and full version and still listed pretty much across the board at welterweight. And so people criticize other boxers about holding titles hostage. And this, in a way, is something that's taking place here because they're holding titles hostage right now in multiple divisions. So nothing has come out for the WBO yet. I was under the impression that Madrimov was representing the WBA, yet to my understanding, it wasn't the case. And if it was, I missed it completely. But I do see that some websites are listing Terence Crawford as the 154-pound interim for the WBA and the WBO, while others are just listing him as the interim for the WBO. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. And then that card being headlined Vergil Ortiz and Serhii Bohachuk, it's a really, really interesting card where these fighters have 45 wins between the two. Serhii Bohachuk was defeated a few years back, but climbed himself back up into contendership and ends up walking away with a title with that victory over Brian Mendoza. So 45 wins between these two guys, only one defeat that Serhii Bohachuk suffered. But the knockout ratio, Vergil Ortiz is 21-0 with 21 knockouts. And Serhii Bohachuk is 24-1 with 23 knockouts. So 44 knockouts between the two guys. Somebody's going to go down. And if this doesn't, and that's why they're listing this as a fight of the year, at least De La Hoya is selling it as the fight of the year. And he might be right. He might be onto something because the knockout ratio is really, really high for both of these fighters. 43 knockouts between the two guys, heavy hands, and both end up lunging forward. So don't be surprised if there is knockdowns or ultimately a knockout and somebody wins by knockout. They know each other from their sparring days. They fought or they trained together. So that's what's intriguing about this matchup, that there's a little history between them. There's a little bit of bad blood there if you saw the weigh-ins yesterday and the conferences leading up to this week. So that's really interesting. It's a really interesting matchup that I think you should tune into. On the co-main event is going to be Gabriela Fundora defending her her IBF title against Daniela Asenjo. Cecilia Braques was supposed to fight Emma Kozin on this card for the WBC, another interim title. They're at 154 pounds for women. Cecilia Braques was supposed to fight against Emma Kozin and Emma Kozin's titles. She had visa issues, couldn't make the fight, so they ended up calling up Marisela Cornejo, who was just in action on the undercard of Yocasta Valle out in Costa Rica just a couple weeks ago. And now she's back in action, so she stayed ready, and now she got the call to fight a legendary fighter like Cecilia Braques, who's 40 years old, I believe, and this is going to be her debut out in Las Vegas. I don't think she's ever fought in Las Vegas, so that's going to be a cool fight as well for women's boxing. That's the third fight on the card. Charles Conwell, another man who's keeping tabs on the main event, Charles Conwell, of course, fights under the Golden Boy banner. 154-pound fighter. He's fighting Chiari Gray. This is a 10-round fight. The undefeated Charles Conwell, another heavy-handed super welterweight that's lining himself up for title contention. And he reminds me a lot of Erickson Lubin. Now, don't be surprised if Charles Conwell performs great, because he's trying to line himself up for potentially to challenge whoever wins in the main event. And being that it's an in-house card with Golden Boy, if there's any issues that happen making other fights, Oscar and Bernard are not going to hesitate, and they'll make that fight. They'll push for a Charles Conwell and Virgil Ortiz fight, or what have you. Eric Priest, an up-and-coming fighter for Golden Boy, he's going to be also on the card. And Kenneth Sims, who's a 140-pounder, 20-2 and 20 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. Kenneth Sims is debuting for Golden Boy. Remember, a lot of promise behind Kenneth Sims. Good pedigree, good amateur record. He has that loss to Samuel Tea dating back to 2018 and Rolando Chinea back in 2017. Since then, he's put together 7 wins in a row. So he's on a 7-fight win streak. More recently, he beat Borisan Akhmedov. Now he's going to be fighting Jonathan Romero, who comes in with a 35-4 record. This is his debut with Golden Boy under the Golden Boy Promotions banner. And so interesting, because that 140-pound division is also a stacked one where a lot of movement within those champions, with the exception of Teofimo Lopez, who's the only reigning defending champion there for his title. And then Joel Iriarte, if you didn't check out that interview, I got to interview him on the undercard of he fought on the undercard of Cepeda and Giovanni Cabrera early July. Check out that interview that I had with him, because he's a big-time amateur fighter with rich boxing pedigree. He's 3-0, and he's going. This is his 4th fight. So he fought July 6th, and now he's going to be fighting again. Here we are in August, early August, just a month apart, and he's fighting once again. He's going for his 4th victory, fighting a young man by the name of Miguel Ortiz, who also shares a similar record, stepping into the ring with a 3-1. Joel Iriarte had 17 national titles, I believe, and check out the interview, because he gives me his stats, and it was super interesting to talk to him. Very humble young kid, very hungry young kid, and he's campaigning at welterweight. Tall, lanky for that division, could definitely pose a lot of problems to his opponents, especially to the top level opponents, but he's still developing. He's still coming into his own within the ranks, and they're obviously moving him. They've placed him on a fast track, and he's performing in that fashion. So very, very interesting card. The other one that's taking place today is out in Albuquerque, and that's a fight that I wanted to attend to, and the reason I didn't get access to go cover press for the Albuquerque card, that's between Venado Lopez and Angelo Leo. You guys have heard me put several episodes in the past covering Angelo Leo's fights on Pro Box TV. He's been looking sensational at 126 pounds. That fight taking place in Albuquerque, Venado Lopez traveling as a champion once again to enemy territory. Angelo Leo is a native of New Mexico, and Venado Lopez is going into his house to put his title on the line. Angelo Leo has looked sensational since he dropped his title at 122 to Cowboy Steph, to Stephen Fulton, and he moved up to 126, and he has looked amazing. I've been following his fights. I've been covering them here, so you could go back and check out those episodes, and I'm so happy to see that he's getting a title shot. It's a tough task to place him against Venado Lopez, but it's a good one. This is going to be a hell of a fight as well for Top Rank. So whichever one you're able to catch, hopefully they don't crisscross each other with the main event, and then you're able to catch both of them. I'll be keeping tabs on both of them, or just get multiple TVs going if you're able to. I don't know what kind of setup you got, but that's the kind of setup you need for nights like this. This is going to be an interesting one. Venado Lopez, Angelo Leo, and then the co-main event there, you're going to have Lindolfo Delgado against Brian Flores. Lindolfo Delgado, another top dog at 140 pounds. That's another top-level Mexican fighter that's coming up. A lot of people don't know about him unless you follow his career real closely. He's as high pedigree as it gets at 140 pounds, heavy-handed, and very good discipline, very disciplined fighter. I got to interview him a while back. You could check out that interview on my YouTube channel as well. And that was on the undercard of the Liam Wilson, Oscar Valdez earlier this year that I got to talk to him, so you could get to know him. Check out that interview. And then Kid Kansas, I got a couple interviews on the YouTube channel as well. He's fighting on that undercard. Alan Garcia is doing some big things. They keep moving him between 135, 140, and I've asked him several times about that, and he doesn't care. He wants to campaign a lightweight. He wants to campaign a 135, but he wants to stay active. And he's accepting basically any and all comers. Anybody they offer him, he takes it. And even if they're at catchweight to 137 or what have you, Alan Garcia is answering the call, and he's that guy. He is that guy for me. He is one that's going to do big things in boxing, and every time I talk to him, he's just so hungry to get in the ring and just prove that he belongs in there with the top names. Alan Garcia, if he's successful tonight, I see bigger things for him, and I would put Alan Garcia against an Emiliano Vargas. I would put Alan Garcia against a Keyshawn Davis, and I would list it as a 50-50 fight, Alan Garcia and Keyshawn Davis. That's how good he is, and he's not super recognized. He's not a household name, obviously, like a Keyshawn, or at least not as recognizable as Keyshawn is, or Emiliano Vargas, but he is that talented. And go do some homework on Kid Kansas, on Alan Garcia, because he's doing some big things, and he can be that fighter. He has all the talent in the world, fast hands and powerful hands, because he's usually knocking these guys out in quick succession, and just super heavy-handed young man that has a lot of promise. He says he wants to campaign at lightweight. On one of the interviews, he told me he's going to stay at 135 until he gets a title, and then he'll figure out what to do. But he's not leaving 135 until he comes away with a title. And so he's in action again on the undercard of Venado Lopez and Angelo Leo. So those are the two big events taking place today, Saturday, August 10th. I will be catching a flight here shortly. And so I hope you guys don't miss those fights. Virgil Ortiz, Sergey Bohachuk seems to be taking all the attention, and deservingly so, as it's only going to not clear up the landscape at 154, but it's only going to muddy it even more. But what a fight. This is a fight that Bohachuk should have fought against Sebastian Fundora, or was scheduled to fight Sebastian Fundora. Thurman ended up pulling out. Fundora got pulled up to fight Sue, and then pulls off the upset and becomes a unified champ at 154. Bohachuk became an interim champ by defeating late stand-in Brian Mendoza. And now we have Virgil Ortiz, who got skipped by Terrence Crawford, who got skipped by the organization and placed into a fight with Madrimov, where Virgil Ortiz was a mandatory to face. He got skipped, and now he got placed into this one with Sergey Bohachuk. So a lot of movement that's been taking place, and a lot of talent there. Jesus Ramos, Erickson Lubin, Charlo coming back, Brian Castaño, Ocampo still there, Jason Rosario, Jarrett Hurd making a comeback. Interesting landscape at 154 pounds, and as muddy as the waters could get in any division, the 154 is all over the place right now, with a multitude of interim champs and international champs and what have you. Nothing decided, but everybody fighting to clear up those waters and clear the way. So I'll leave you guys with that. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Enjoy the boxing night. It's going to be a great night of boxing. We're just a week removed from the Riyadh card out in LA, which took 8 hours. Let's hope neither one of these take that long. I don't foresee that happening. No concerts. Just straight boxing, and hope you guys enjoy it. It's a big card. I think 11 fights for Golden Boy. I think there's about 8 fights for Top Rank, but usually they end up airing the top 3 or 4 fights for Top Rank. And for Golden Boy, a lot of fights and a lot of decent names on that card as a supporting cast for Virgil Ortiz and Sergey Bohachuk. I want to hear from you guys. When you guys hear this episode, give me a prediction. You guys foresee a knockout? 43 knockouts between these two fighters. Let me know if you guys foresee a knockout, how you guys see the card ending, or how you see that main event ending, and who should the victor face. If it's Virgil Ortiz, should he go straight into Terrence Crawford or maybe Fundora? Or if it's Bohachuk, should he fight Madrimov or maybe get a bigger name? Interested to hear what you guys think. Take care of yourselves. I'll check you guys out on the recap episodes. And thank you guys again for tuning in. And keep an eye out on those interviews that I have coming up that I managed to get at the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame. Super glad that I got to attend that event. And I hope you guys enjoy that. Take care of yourselves. Have a great night.